Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel reassesses its ties with the United States and the United Nations after a controversial UN resolution is passed. Israelis rack up an impressive amount of aid for victims of the Syrian civil war, and the Holy Land celebrates Christmas and Hanukkah. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here with the latest news in Israel. The Obama administration is being slammed by U.S. lawmakers of both parties today for allowing the UN Security Council to adopt a resolution demanding an immediate end to Israel's presence in Judea, Samaria, and even parts of Jerusalem. The White House ignored calls from President-elect Donald Trump, as well as Israel and several American senators, to veto the measure. New Zealand, Malaysia, Venezuela, and Senegal advanced the bill for a vote by the 15-member council. This happened just one day after Egypt withdrew the text it drafted with the Palestinians, primarily because of a personal request from Trump. The U.S. abstention allowed the anti-Israel bill to pass in what's being seen as a parting shot by President Barack Obama, who's long held an acrimonious relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The outgoing U.S. leader also made the settlements a major target of his peace efforts that were ultimately proven futile. After the vote, the U.S. ambassador to the UN did her best to justify the radical shift in policy.
It is because this forum too often continues to be biased against Israel, because there are important issues that are not sufficiently addressed in this resolution, and because the United States does not agree with every word in this text, that the United States did not vote in favor of the resolution. But it is because this resolution reflects the facts on the ground and is consistent with U.S. policy across Republican and Democratic administrations throughout the history of the State of Israel that the United States did not veto it.
The passage of the resolution changes nothing on the ground between Israel and the Palestinians and is likely to be ignored by both the Trump and Netanyahu administrations. But the U.S. decision to withdraw its diplomatic protection of Israel is still viewed as dangerous because it's likely to spur further Palestinian moves against Israel in international forums. Other senior Israeli officials believe it could even encourage the unleashing of further Palestinian terrorism against the Jewish people. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is wasting no time in fighting back against the UN member states, which supported the controversial resolution. At the beginning of this morning's weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu told his ministers he shares their anger and frustration over the vote, which he calls hostile and unbalanced. Just a few days ago, he told U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry that friends do not take friends to the Security Council, and that even though Washington and Jerusalem differ over the settlements, they've previously agreed the UN isn't the place to resolve this issue. The Israeli leader says now it will be even harder to negotiate with the Palestinians and that peace has only been driven further away. He also says it's rewarding to see how many Republican and Democratic friends are standing with Israel and that he's looking to them and the next U.S. administration. President-elect Donald Trump tweeted his own criticism of the vote and vows things will be different after he takes office on January 20th. Meanwhile, Netanyahu says the Jewish state has no choice other than to reassess its ties with the United Nations, and has ordered the ambassadors of the Security Council states to be summoned for a formal reprimand, even though it's Christmas Day. Immediately after the close of the Sabbath, Netanyahu assured the Jewish nation the shameful UN vote will be countered.
בנוסף, אני הנחיתי את משרד החוץ להשלים תוך חודש הערכה מחדש של כל ההתקשרויות שלנו עם האו"ם, כולל המימון הישראלי למוסדות האו"ם והנוכחות של נציגי האו"ם בארץ. כבר עכשיו הוריתי להפסיק מימון של כ-30 מיליון שקל ל5 מוסדות של האו"ם, 5 גופים שהם עוינים במיוחד נגד ישראל. כבר עכשיו לעצור את זה, והמשך יבוא.
The Israeli leader did not offer any further details, but so far all of Israel's significant aid programs to one of the bill's co-sponsors, Senegal, have been canceled. Netanyahu also shelved the planned visit of the Senegalese foreign minister, as well as this week's visit by Ukraine's prime minister for supporting the resolution. Left-wing groups, on the other hand, say the bill isn't as bad as it seems.
The Security Council's resounding resolution reaffirms the international consensus on the settlements and their consequences with regard to the human rights of Palestinians. Contrary to government spin, this resolution is not an anti-Israeli resolution. This is a resolution that is for the future of Israelis, for the future of Palestinians, rejecting the occupation and the settlements.
The Netanyahu government and its constituency disagree, citing the Jewish people's biblical connection to the land. Joining us now to discuss the implications of this resolution on Israel is senior Israeli diplomat Dani Ayalon and CEO of the Hebrew City Organization, Mai Golan. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start with the big question. What is the true significance of this resolution passing in the UN Security Council? Are we going to actually see anything happen as a result of it?
I'm not sure that there will be any continuation. You see, the issue with the UN Security Council resolutions is the escalation process. For instance, before the Iraq War, there were 16 resolutions until sanctions and then force was, of course, authorized. Here, I believe it was taken under Chapter 6, not under Chapter 7, so it will not have much significance, except that there is a deviation from long-standing U.S. policy to defend Israel in this house of bigotry and bias, which is called the UN. And they have done it not only because they were friends and allies, because they realized that if they let the UN in, there is no chance for furthering any negotiation and peace, because it will lock the Palestinians into a very intransigent position, as it is now. And on the other hand, pushing Israel into the corner will not allow us to make any concessions either. So I think it was very bad for American interest, for our interests, and probably for
now speaking of
the
American,
region.
yes. Now speaking of American, Israeli relations, what is the significance of the U.S. choosing not to veto this resolution? Do you want to respond to that?
I have to say, I absolutely agree with everything that Dani says, but I have to be a little bit less politically correct, maybe because I can, and this is the way I've been speaking for the last few days. In my opinion, this is Obama's middle finger to Israel. This is the same president who has headed for Israel and for our prime minister for the last 8 years. And right before he leaves, while he's vacationing in Hawaii, in his $1 million vacation with his family, he authorized his people to not veto this decision, although he could have killed it. And I want to say something about this decision. Although, in my opinion, Israel should not only disregard this resolution, but it should disregard all resolutions by the UN, because we're talking about a bunch of people who are, I'm sorry, but anti-Semitic, detached from reality people. I think that Israel should remember that she has the right to build when and where it wants, like any other country in the world. So I believe that although this resolution will affect, if in the future we will want to come to the negotiation table, the Palestinians will come already to the table presuming they own our land, because this resolution is not only about the settlements, we're talking about the entire West Bank, our holy places, the Western Wall. In their opinion, we don't entitle to our entire country. But in the end of the day, we need to remember that this is the same UN who's been ignoring one of the worst massacres that this world have seen for the last years. When women and men and children are being slaughtered in Syria, they don't want to handle, big, rich Arab dictators, but they do want to pick on little Israel. And therefore, I think that, as Trump said, we should wait to January 20th and hope that the new ambassador, David Friedman, will move the embassy to Jerusalem, will say that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel, and things will be different, and the budget from Israel and from the US should be cut to the UN.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about, Israeli foreign affairs as a result of this resolution passing. We're speaking about the U.S. and kind of what the implications are for the U.S.-Israeli relationship, but there were other countries involved too that chose to support this resolution. And now the Israeli Prime Minister has to respond to those leaders. What are we going to see happen?
Well, there are two tracks. There is the multilateral and the bilateral. In the multilateral, always we had a disadvantage. There is this automatic majority because of the Arab votes, the Muslim votes, and of course their pressure on other countries. And there is the bilateral, where country to country, most states benefit from relations with us and they want to pursue it, and there is no change in the volume of trade, economic cooperation, technology transfer, you name it. But the problem is, of course, with the image and with the status when it comes to the public opinion. And the UN has been and continues to be the biggest delegitimizer for Israel. And this is just another example. So it is incumbent upon the Israeli diplomats now, the foreign ministry, the prime minister's office, and everybody that can do something to create kind of a network of support for Israel, whether it's in the social media, whether it's in the regular media, whether it's in campuses. It is very important to do it now.
So my final question for you guys, since we have a long show today, in response to this resolution, Gilad Erdan, Naftali Bennett, these Israeli leaders have come out and pushed for the unilateral annexation of large sections of the West Bank. What message does that send to the international community, and is that even a feasible move right now?
I completely think it's a valid move, and I do want to say that I do appreciate what Homeland Minister Gilad Erdan is doing on that matter, because I think they come from a point when they know that Israel has the right to continue and build on its land. And if we will, take seriously the decisions of the UN, we will need to get out of our country and look where to be. So I just want to say that I believe that just like the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has started putting sanctions lately on every country that voted for this shameful anti-Semitic resolution, I think that Gilad Erdan and Naftali Bennett are doing the right thing, and I think the only answer to this really shameful resolution is to continue to build in our land.
And Danny?
I would wait for Trump to get into office. I don't think that we should preempt, his arrival, and it would be very, very important to work together with the United States, to work together with the White House, to work together with the next president of the United States. And right now, I think there is no hurry. We are in control of the area, and we continue to do what we need to do.
Just one last sentence I wanted to say. When you were talking about the countries that voted against us, like Great Britain, like Germany, I just want to say that it worries me very much that the world wasn't going to take action against this decision. And it worries me that if someday we will find ourselves under attack from the world, that these countries won't be on our side. And that's why it's very important that the U.S. will promote, sanctions against the UN.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming in, and we will have to see the impact of this resolution in the near future. Now, if you're wondering how the local people are reacting to the Security Council resolution against Israeli settlement building, it pretty much depends on whom is being asked. Jewish residents in Har Homa are voicing anger, but also point out that previous anti-Israeli resolutions by the UN have had very little effect over the reality on the ground. Their neighborhood is considered to be in East Jerusalem, captured by Israel in the 1967 war, meaning that even though they live in the capital, they're considered to be settlers by many in the international community.
אני חושב שזו החלטה חד צדדית. בעבר קיבלו נגד ישראל הרבה החלטות אנטי-ישראליות באו"ם, ששום דבר לא החזיק מהם, ולמזלנו אנחנו ממשיכים לבנות בירושלים, וצריך להמשיך לבנות פה. אנחנו כאן עם שכונת הר חומה, ב-96 קיבלו החלטה להקים את השכונה, הייתה התנגדות גדולה בעולם. היום השכונה הזאת היא שכונה של 30,000 תושבים. ממולה נמצאת אום טובה, ששם בונים בלי הפסקה. אז אני לא מבין למה להם כן מותר לבדות ולנו לא.
ההחלטה של האו"ם, אני חושב שהאו"ם אף פעם לא ייצג את מדינת ישראל. תמיד היה נגדה. ונמשיך ככה, כמו תמיד, לעשות את מה שאנחנו חושבים. לטובת מדינת ישראל, לטובת עם ישראל.
The UN bill wouldn't have passed if any of the 5 permanent members had used their veto powers. At least one Jerusalemite is blaming the Netanyahu administration for failing to persuade the US, Russia, France, Britain, or China to stop the resolution from being approved.
אני חושב שההחלטה היא החלטה כתוצאה ממדיניות חוץ כושלת של הממשלה שלנו, וזהו, אני מקווה שהנזק יהיה כמה שיותר מצומצם.
The Palestinians want the West Bank for their future state. But while they're predictably supporting the UN demand for Israel to end its presence in Judea, Samaria, and East Jerusalem, they're also expressing little hope this latest resolution will do much to change the actual situation. Governor of Arkansas Mike Huckabee now joins us with some reactions on the ground in the United States. Merry Christmas and thanks for joining us. Now, to begin, what is the general reaction in the United States in response to the passing of this UN resolution?
Overwhelmingly, Americans are very angry at the administration. And this includes Democrats. This is not a partisan issue here in the U.S. Most Americans recognize that Israel is not only a true ally and friend, but a strategic partner in the Middle East and one of the few places where freedom and democracy exist, to slap the face of the Israelis after years of protecting this kind of nonsense from happening to them. For this administration to violate that longstanding policy is simply unconscionable and unforgivable.
What kind of impact will this have on the relationship between the United States and Israel, given the fact that the U.S. chose not to veto the resolution?
I think it's a breach of relationship between Israel and the Obama administration. But I think in many ways, it's going to mean a much better relationship for Israel and the United States when the Trump administration takes office. I think it's even something that is bringing Democrats and Republicans together. And after a very divisive election here, in many ways, the positive impact is that Democrats in the U.S. and Republicans in the U.S. are uniting to express their outrage. And some of the reasons that this is so offensive is because there was no point in this. To have a resolution that essentially dismisses any idea that whatever negotiation should take place should happen between Israel and the Palestinians, and instead for the United Nations, which has become a worthless paper tiger organization that looks the other way at true terrorism, that looks the other way at genocide all over the world. And then when it has an opportunity to give a kick in the seat of the pants to a democratic nation like Israel, it does so. It is nothing short of anti-Semitic. It is nothing short of an act of hate. And I would hope that, frankly, the United States under Donald Trump would let it be known to the UN that either they reverse their policies or the United States will no longer participate and would withhold funding from the UN and get out completely, jackhammer the entire building right off into the East River and float it to whatever country would like to host it.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Merry Christmas to you and your family. As images from the Syrian civil war are aired on news bulletins, many Israelis feel they just can't sit by silently and not do something to help. Most are simply shocked by what they're seeing.
Things like that on TV, you basically see the fighting. When you see it firsthand, it kind of shocks you, is to see that it's actually families that are involved. It's little kids, it's children.
Many Israelis are using social media to collect money and supplies for the Syrian people. One Israeli mother posted a message on Facebook in efforts to collect essential clothing needed by Syrian children.
אתה מרגיש שאנשים רק מתים לעשות משהו. עכשיו שוב, מה זה בגדים? זה קשקוש, זה לא יעצור שם שום דבר. אבל זה איזושהי הרגשה, כי אתה רואה את המראות ואתה נחנק, אתה לא יודע מה לעשות עם עצמך. הילד שלך ישן מעולה במיטה, הכל טוב, ושם הם מתחת להריסות. הם הולכים מפוחדים, מבועטים. וזה פה, הם שכנים, וזה בכלל לא קשור סורים, לא סורים, זה לא מעניין, זה בני אדם, זה חפים מפשע. מה שאפשר לעשות, עושים, ובאמת, עם ישראל יצא מגדרו.
The donations are being transferred to an Israeli hospital which treats wounded Syrian refugees, only after all their Hebrew labels have been removed. The wounded victims have to be brought in discreetly because Syria remains in a formal state of war with Israel. Many arrive on buses provided by an Israeli NGO called Amalia, whose founder says Jewish history during the Holocaust should drive every Israeli to help when atrocities are taking place across the border.
And I actually felt, us as Jews, us as Israeli, we gotta wake up, because this is what the Syrian people are actually going through, the Holocaust. They did. The Israeli, I can tell you for sure, in the last week woke up.
The chairman of Israel's Holocaust Memorial is also calling on the international community to do more to end the carnage in Syria.
I think that the time has come, and the world leaders must take the right steps to stop those massacres, atrocities, and the murder, and to assist and give a hand to those victims who are looking for safe haven and humanity help.
The head of another Israeli NGO organized a protest in front of the Russian embassy in Tel Aviv, partially due to the reminder from his parents who survived the Holocaust that the world kept silent during the murder of 6 million Jews.
The only thing we can do is just try to press, to yell, to help our prime minister and the government, to help the Syrian people. And apparently they move in the right directions. They did it before, and hopefully they'll do it in the future more.
The Israeli Prime Minister has just announced that even more ways are now being developed to expand the Jewish state's medical assistance for Syrian women, children, and non-combatant men. It's Christmas Day, and there's no place more meaningful for Christians to be than in the Holy Land. Aaron, I know this might sound like a sarcastic question, but what is so newsworthy about Christians gathering in the birthplace of Jesus on Christmas?
Well, due to the wave of terror, tourism in Palestinian-controlled areas has taken a really hard hit. So it's nice to see that, things are taking a turn for the better.
Pilgrims from around the world packed the site believed to be Jesus' place of birth in Bethlehem's Manger Square for Christmas Eve celebrations.
It's a very special atmosphere, and it's very special to come to the very place where all started with the Catholic and religion. So I feel very privileged to be able to be here with my family, and it's very exciting to be here.
Bethlehem is the place where Jesus is born, so it's a special day for us to come. It's the first day that we are here on the 24th of December, so we celebrate it together with everybody. Is happy here, singing on the streets. There is life. It's great to be here.
It's our first time in here, so it's really special for us to come here in the Christmas Eve, and we really appreciate being here.
Tourism is a major source of revenue for the Palestinian economy and provides livelihoods for about 5,000 families in the biblical city. About 2.3 million people visited the territories this year, which is slightly more than last year, given the relative drop in Palestinian violence. One of the season's highlights is the special Christmas midnight mass at the Church of the Nativity, led by the acting Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem.
First of all, we want to welcome the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen. We are very happy and grateful for his presence. According to the tradition, your presence, as I said many times, is a comfort and a strength for our Christian community.
The 4th century church is currently undergoing its first comprehensive renovation since it was completed 1,700 years ago. Many of the pilgrims' Holy Land itineraries also include visits to nearby Jerusalem, as well as Jesus' boyhood town of Nazareth in the Galilee, which is now the largest Arab city in Israel.
Tonight, Jews around the world are marking the second night of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, and as a special surprise, some young students from the Kehila Democratic School in Tel Aviv are lighting the menorah for ILTV.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה ניסים לאבותינו ולאמותינו, בימים ההם בזמן הזה. Amen. My name is Chen, and I'm a teacher at Kehila the Democratic School of Tel Aviv. I light this candle for all the women who are not afraid anymore to stand up for themselves.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Sometimes the challenges we encounter throughout our day come from assuming we have understandings with others when the details were never actually hashed out. So today's word is havana, meaning understanding in Hebrew. Maybe you've been asked to approach your teenager's outburst with havana. Maybe you've been asked how you got that really great deal in the marketplace, and the answer would be that you and the seller have a havana. Or perhaps you feel like you're playing the telephone game at work and you've got no idea what's going on. That comes from any havana, or a misunderstanding. Whatever the case may be, havana is typically a gateway to bigger and better things within your worldview. As Albert Einstein once said, any fool can know the point is havana. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight you can expect occasional thunderstorms across the north and center with a chance of floods. The low will be around 48 or 9 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow should be more of the same, and with a high of 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.82 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.